Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about the library here at the Community of the Resurrection. Um, so we've got our library brother, Father Nicholas, and he's going to be telling us a little bit about our library. So Nicholas, tell us first of all, why is it that a monastery needs a library?
Because monastic life is about prayer, the spiritual life, and the intellectual life all joined up in one. We don't really separate those out. To pray effectively, we need to know about the world in which we're praying and the whole tradition of the Christian life, which is part of our existence. So you could say that a library has an importance very much like that of the chapel where the prayers are said, the library where the brethren study, and as a third part, the refectory where brethren eat together.
Wonderful. And what is it that makes a monastic library special? What makes it different from an ordinary kind of library?
I suppose in one sense it's not different because we are concerned with the whole of life, not just one little area of life. So almost any kind of book could find a place in our library, and almost every subject is represented in some way in our library. So if you do have books on maths and science, as well as on social studies and all sorts of other things. But the library will tend to concentrate on the core parts of the faith, so that scripture has a large section, patristic studies has a large section, doctrine has a large section, and also liturgy, of course, is something that we do specialize in. So those would be the core part, the most important part of our library, and that's what we mostly spend our money on.
So what are the essential books for a monastic library?
The essential ones, I think we have to remember that monastic life has been around since about the 2nd century, or you could trace it back to Christ himself. We do have very deep roots, and those roots need to be constantly nourished. You can't have a monastery just living in the 21st century. We must know our past, and we must be in touch with our past so that we have good judgment and good knowledge when it comes to trying to understand the present and the future. That's one reason why we increasingly make good use of the patristic studies from the 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th centuries, and scripture itself, of course, because in that we hear the words of Christ and the witness of God himself speaking down through the ages. Those, I think, are something that all monastics should read. Others would then have their particular interests. Some of us are interested in languages, 1 or 2 people are interested in trains, all sorts of interests and hobbies find their way into a library. And I think that's one reason why monastic libraries tend to be actually rather more interesting than, say, a public library would be, because you can walk around it and see how one area grew because one particular brother was interested in that subject, and another area might be neglected because no one touched that one. Just over there, we have a very good selection of children's books, including all the Harry Potter books, because a number of us found children's books very entertaining and helpful and even good for preaching.
Now you brought along a couple of books to talk about.
I have. These are 2 which I have valued immensely recently. Donut Economics by Kate Raworth, which is about a new approach to economics to get away from the consumerism which is destroying our world. Now, I never in my life thought I would read a book or even an article on economics, because I always found economics so utterly boring. This book I read in a few days as if it were a thriller. It's beautifully written, beautifully clear, and very exciting. And she starts with explaining why, right from the start, economics has gone wrong and produced an economic system that is now destroying the environment, the climate, and the human race. And she also describes, in a tentative kind of way, what can be done to put that right. So I strongly recommend this book for any of you listeners, viewers, who are concerned for the state of our world. The other one is rather different, and this is by a very good friend of our community, Claire Gilbert, who in fact was here just last week on retreat. And she did a PhD on Julian of Norwich, the Revelations, and then wrote this book, which is really a novel, but purports to be the autobiography of Julian of Norwich. And again, it is beautifully written, goes very deeply into the reasons why Julian probably became a recluse and prayed for a world that was in deep trouble at the time. It's a very moving book, but also a very easy one to read. Again, I went through it in a couple of days, and I'm looking forward to reading it again. What about you, Charlie? You use the library quite a lot. Which is the part that you find most valuable about the library?
I think, for me, probably the most important part of the library is that section that has the church fathers in it. And those are the fathers of the church in general, but also the fathers of the monastic tradition. So all those who've come before us in this rich tradition of the monastic life and have gathered so much wisdom and insight into that life and written that down for us. But it's also a place to come and understand something of the life and history of our community and to feel part of that tradition. So I brought along a book which I was reading just the other day, which is by somebody who specialises in the church fathers. And I was reading this. He's an Orthodox scholar, and as I was reading through it, I came across a page dedicating the book to somebody, and it turned out that it was to one of our brothers.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
really?
One of the founders of our community.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was a lovely book to show the intersection of all those different elements that make up this library and make it such a rich repository of tradition and wisdom and guidance, really.
And who was the brother concerned?
It was Walter Fr.
And do you have any reason to think why Florovsky dedicated the book to Walter Fr?
It was because Fr was a founder member of a society which was designed to bring together Orthodox and Anglican Christians to better understand one another's tradition. So they had worked together in that society and obviously developed a great affection for one another. So it's lovely to have that memory sort of on paper in the library.
Yeah, I think also you and I both value the library because it means we can get away from the telephone and the emails and the brethren who come and knock on your door asking you to do things. And with a bit of luck, they won't think that you're hiding in the library with a great nice pile of books concealing you from the world.
Yes.
And I have to say also, one of the things I really like this library is that it's quite a beautiful library. It's not just a sort of storeroom of books. It has lovely views out of the windows. It has that really authentic library smell. You know, it's something you cannot concoct. Different books just produce a different kind of smell. And you go around, or you sit in a place and you've got the same set of books around you, and you feel that you've got all these writers and people with you in your studies. So it's a wonderful way to get away from the busyness of our world and try to think more deeply about the issues that should be at the heart of monastic life, and maybe especially about the God whom we as monks and other Christian people are trying to worship and trying to bring more into our world.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.